Thank you everyone for joining us. For those of you that don't know what you've joined, this is our Future Reimagined series, where we are joined by CEO of a company to discuss what their company's future reimagined looks like and how they plan on moving forward. I think over the last 14 months at this point, the term pivot has been thrown around more times than ever, and every company was put in a situation where they had to think differently about where they're going. So today we're joined by Nick Iovacchini from KettleSpace. Nick is a serial founder of successful companies across a wide range of industries. Nick is the CEO and co-founder of KettleSpace, where they are leveraging software, workspace, and expertise to create solutions that enable companies to successfully launch and maintain new hybrid work models. So I think Nick's not only his product, but really his research that he's done over the last 14 months is probably going to be very valuable to really any business owner that needs to think differently about how their employees are working. So Nick, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Cool, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's just jump into a couple of questions. If you could tell us a little bit about KettleSpace prior to 2020, any COVID-related pivots, and what 2021 and beyond looks like for you guys.
Yeah, so we've had a pretty wild ride, and we're sort of the story of definitely have a before, during, and after story. Prior to COVID, early March 2020, we had several thousand paying subscribers. We had 7-figure annual recurring revenue, close to 20 locations located throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn. And that was March 13th, Friday. We just launched our mobile app. And by March 16th, Monday, we elected to voluntarily close. This was prior to the mandate. We voluntarily ceased operations, paused all revenue, compressed our team, and sort of executed against a very aggressive continuity plan that we had going into going into the COVID, universe of the unknown. At that point, it was really terrifying and scary, and not only for our company, but all of us as humans were going through, some form of shock. But we worked closely with our investors and kind of shored up our team, and in the midst of enduring what was probably the most imaginable sort of painful experience in losing your core business overnight, we were optimistic. We were able to kind of look at the glass half full and say, there is a future beyond this, and it'll likely accelerate a lot of the remote work trends that we had been hoping were picking up momentum prior to COVID. So we put our heads down and we reevaluated everything from top to bottom, our entire strategy, our entire kind of positioning with the unknown and the future beyond COVID projections, and we started building software. We figured, we had this workspace model where we were partnering with hotels, restaurants, retail assets of other flavors, and helping them monetize excess capacity where they had, space that's built and beautiful and just sitting there. And that was our core model, was a workspace business. And we still, intend to reopen that business this summer, but at the time and for the last year, it's been largely unconsumable. So we looked at the opportunity to kind of hibernate and build software to further enable and make our business more efficient. And in doing so, sorry, I got a weird feedback on my end, but in doing so, we started talking to as many business leaders as we could, anybody that would have a conversation with them. And this started about last April. And our questions were, what's keeping you at night? What are your employees saying? What's the pulse? What are you worried about? And where do you have a solution? Where do you need one? And having talked to so many different leaders kind of navigating this new unknown environment, we started recognizing some patterns, and it led us to realize pretty quickly that the future would be hybrid, and we endeavored to build software and product to support companies figuring that out. And then we were fortunate enough to hook up with NYU as they were bringing students back to campus and really take some of the tech that we were cooking on and put it into the wild and work with. NYU has been an awesome partner be able to work with their leadership and their users to kind of find this new equilibrium of mixed modality and support it through software and expertise. And that's sort of the world we lived in. We tried to reopen in the fall, and the second surge hit, and it was just a little bit too much kind of momentum working against us, too much wind in our face. So we decided, let's just hibernate the workspace business till the summer, focus on the software, and now as the world is reemerging, people are talking about hybrid, and we're sort of at the right place at the right time with a product, and also the kind of knowledge, having gone deep down the rabbit hole to help people figure out some of these complexities.
So for us, I'm more of a visual learner. So could you kind of paint a picture or show us really what the current model looks like, to where, before you were offering space where space was available, and, there was a convenience to where I could perhaps say, okay, I'm a KettlesSpace subscriber. I can go to this restaurant that allows me to work in their space from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or whatever the hours for that establishment were. Now you've created something that will work towards the employer, really in any industry or market or anything, to where, still focusing on where you can provide space and partnering someone who needs space and someone who has space. But if you could show us really what that looks like from a customer interface standpoint, just so, the employers on this call can understand what it is that you've created.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Just do a quick screen share. You guys, Bob, can you see that okay? All right, cool. So one of the first things, sort of how our software relates to our space, is we've effectively decoupled software from space. So we still offer space, and we're going to be reopening that in the tri-state area, but we also offer software which can go anywhere. We're calling our software KettleOS, and our spaces KettlesSpaces. And the gist of it, I'm sure all of you are aware of it, kind of the media story. This wasn't quite so obvious 3, 6, 9 months ago in the media, but it was coming clear to us. The gist is, we've all read these stats. Nobody wants to be at home every day, and nobody wants to be in the office every day. And somewhere in there will be new equilibriums. Talking to all different kinds of companies, there's all different ways that this can be done, days of the week, percentages of the time, employees in this category and that category. But the gist is, the toothpaste isn't going back in the tube. Like, we've all enjoyed some version of this and some of the freedoms that come with remote work, and life and work have gone on. And even things just as simple as, like, nobody realizes, they don't like commuting anymore, and it's that simple. And so we believe that companies are going to have to evolve to build these smart, iterative hybrid models over time, primarily to attract and retain talent, because it's going to be a requirement, and employees kind of power to the people to an extent. And so with that kind of new decision, the hybrid is the emerging model, and it won't be for everyone, but it will be for most. And there are a lot of different ways that it can be constructed. But the gist is, before the pandemic, we all went to work because that's what you did, basically. And then we were all told stay at home. And even though it was jarring, that's what you did. And now it's like, okay, it's going to be a combination, but the idea that this new combination has to be created and coordinated creates a lot of complexities that have really never existed before. And they involve choice, and they involve rules, and they involve people, time, and space, and needing to coordinate those things in a way that's clear, iterative, intuitive is sort of what is at the crux of how to do hybrid. So we're looking at this end-to-end kind of experience, as we're deeming this term WX. And it's this idea that both leaders and employees now need new sets of tools to be able to navigate mixed modalities. And after talking to these thousands of people that we've talked to, one thing is pretty clear from where we sit, is like, nobody's going to get this right on the first swing. We really believe that this is going to be a progression type environment, where the things that we're worried about today, which is getting people out of the house and getting them back into our existing space, over time change to, do I need this much space? Do I renew my lease? How do I build culture? How do I manage folks? in a hybrid environment, and kind of the whole thing will begin to unfold over time. So because we believe it's going to be a progression, and because it checks boxes from HR to facilities to finance to C-suite and technology, it ultimately needs to be a collection of data sitting under one platform that serves kind of all the stakeholders. So our version of this is the ability for managers and leaders that are tasked with figuring this out to have kind of what they need, for the employees to have what they need, and then the data to be created through that ecosystem to make the whole thing smarter over time. So one of the key tenets that people are having to figure out is, what am I doing with the people ops side of things? How am I managing people having choices? What rules am I making? Who's making those rules? Who's making those choices? And what's that matrix look like? And how do I manage it? And how do I make it clear to employees, and also their managers and whoever's making these decisions? So we've created a framework in our product that allows leadership and subcommittees or task force, if they exist, to kind of set the beginning frameworks around who's coming in, what spaces they can access, what's a choice, what's a decision that's a rule, who makes that, et cetera, and kind of at least presents the first bit of framework for it. And then rather than saying, we got this figured out perfectly and you do too, our whole thesis is, let's build this to be adapting over time as we're surfacing insights and data. So what we can do is we can help companies figure out the mixed modality data and triangulate that with either productivity data, KPIs that indicate, whether an employee is thriving, or engagement data, or any other KPIs that a company measures for their existing employees. And then we can say, hey, for this individual, this 50-50 or this Tuesday-Thursday blend is really working. They're thriving. But for this other individual, they're not. So let's recalibrate. And the same can be extrapolated out for teams too. This team is doing really well with an 80-20. This team is not. So let's adjust. And the idea is, again, give the insights so that we can test and learn and really ultimately tighten this over time. So it's working across the board. In addition to people ops, there's space ops, and the idea now that there's HQ, there's also a lot of other alternatives, including work from home, that need to be kind of considered in the ecosystem of places where people can work from. So we try to put everything under one roof, and each of these spaces can be permissioned to different user groups, different teams within the org, kind of all of the stuff that you would need to coordinate who can access what space across an entire portfolio. And we also have, this is where we can supplement near home workspace if it's desired at this time with the KettlesSpace network. It's not a requirement. It's an optional add-on, but unlike kind of traditional co-working, we're able to figure out where people are and bring the space to them, since there's hotels and restaurants and other kind of underutilized retail assets everywhere. But again, it's all meant to be very flexible. And so really just not trying to oversell more than what an organization needs. And for a lot of companies, we think this will be kind of the next year problem. We figured out hybrid, got everybody back in the office, and now we're realizing people have work from home fatigue. We've been doing this for 2 years. Let's get them out of the house, but not pay for a fixed office space for them. Similar idea, you can sort of create these sub experiences. And then, so I'm going fast because I'm just trying to kind of give you a glimpse, but the idea is with the people ops and the space ops coordinated, we start to see a lot of data, and not just data for the sake of data, but real insights that we can use over time to improve real estate decisions and the ROI that we're getting on our fixed space. We have the ability to kind of think about real estate more flexibly than ever before, so we can rebalance the ratio. We can help organizations rebalance the ratio between fixed and flexible. And then we get our cake and eat it too with our employees. They're happy because they're not in the office all the time, but when they are together, it's purposeful, there's intention, and they're engaged, and kind of everybody's getting the best of all worlds. So that's the employer side. And just really quickly, this is the employee side. So this only works if our end user employees are compelled to use the product. And as we think about hybrid, we really think, imagine we've all been at home, but imagine now the differences between a day in the office and a day at home, then a day in the office and a day at home. I have young kids, so like even my whole routine of catching my train and getting dressed and all that will be fundamentally different on those days. So to the extent that we can start with figuring out how to give employees an experience so that they can navigate, and this is the layer we kind of put over hybrid from an employee standpoint. It allows them, based on the day or the week, if they're planning ahead, to choose the type of experience that they either have a choice for or that they're given a policy to follow, and then intuitively be able to navigate. So they can reserve and book any kind of space in advance. But a lot of the hoteling is kind of table stakes. They can coordinate with colleagues. They can plan meetings, plan collaboration. They don't have to plan in advance. And then ultimately, over time, we're going to layer in the ability for them to see where each other are working and kind of self-organize it with some of the organic stuff that is ultimately going to be kind of sacrificed when we're not all together every day. But yeah, that's the gist of the product, Bob. And then, just a little bit about us, but.
So, I mean, I think most companies kind of took the pandemic and, entered into certain pivots to either work around it or, try and really just do what they could to get their job done while dealing with it. I think you guys took it and said, okay, this is the market shift. Let's ride this wave. And you really embraced how things have changed for the typical employer and employee and really built something that, already existed in terms of your market and the expertise that you guys had, but really built something that is now usable to a wider audience, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty jarring in the beginning, but after we kind of settled down and took stock of the opportunities, we felt like this is a time to be bold and take a point of view. And, it's not like we saw it all coming. We just talked to enough people that were living it in real time and we're just really good listeners. So that was probably one of the most effective things we could do is just talk to people and help kind of understand. And if for anybody on the call, I'm happy to share insights or, be a thought partner to anyone. This is a complex thing and there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Okay. So I guess in all that listening that you did, if you did have to narrow it down to one thing, what would be one key lesson that you've learned during this crisis?
The only thing that's certain is there's a lot of uncertainty. And because of that, the leaders really need to think about taking an approach that is iterative. This is not guess and get it right territory. Like it's too complex. There's too much change management involved and it cuts across all these different verticals within a company from culture to money to fixed space. So just, I would say, I've talked to so many different people thinking about this from different angles. Listen to your employees, try to create clarity and acknowledge that, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to try this, and we're going to watch how it goes and iterate and make it better. I think the companies that are thinking along those lines will have advantages. The reality is that it's going to go down that way, whether it's done kind of openly or not. And at the end of the day, especially with Gen Z taking so much of the workforce, like this is going to be a requirement. If people are choosing between a job where they got to show up 5 days a week versus a job where they have some freedom to not be in office every day, Gen Z is already, their vote's already been cast. Like they value work experience and work-life balance and all that stuff that fits with hybrid. So whether it's fully embraced now or whether it's fully embraced 10 years from now, it's a necessary change that's coming. And I think the companies that lean into it and don't have to do it aggressively, but lean into it with an open and iterative framework will retain their talent. They'll attract other talent that is attracted to kind of that type of thinking and be ahead of the curve.
Okay, one more question and then we'll open it up to some viewer questions. I know you've told me that your team has been more productive than ever during this standpoint, and I don't know if that goes to, you know, the fact that you're rebuilding yourselves in a certain way, so there's excitement and joy in there, or if it's the fact that you guys just really know how to work well remotely. Can you attribute like a trait or any, you know, type of management or anything to why you guys were successful working as a team remotely, whereas other businesses maybe not have had so much success, you know, just collaborating while not physically next to somebody, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a couple factors that we've relied on that have allowed us to be we've become more productive. We went through a pretty traumatic thing together where we basically lost our business overnight, and we were all going through something, but like that immediately impacted everyone around a cause. And B, I'd like to think we lived our values in those moments, and that's hard to do when things are really hard. And I think we came together around that. And then because we had 20 some odd locations to work from, we were accustomed to moving around and working from different spaces. It was important for us to work from our spaces. So we had a little bit of a predisposition, but we work in a distributed fashion way better than we did when we were working from our workspaces, because it wasn't as coordinated. So we've been kind of living some of the ideas around coordination. And one of the things that's just a simple thing is we have some rituals that we do, and we've done them every day since March 16th. You know, daily meetings, we do like daily prompts. We have kind of these regimented ways to normalize some of the stuff that we used to do organically. And that's been really helpful for us. It just, I think, and that's where the idea for WX and kind of our app layer has really been born from, which is the idea that we have to build continuity as there's so much diversity in where people are, and, you know, whether they're working from the beach or their house, or they have kids or they don't have kids, or it's a cafe or KettleSpace, doesn't matter. But there needs to be some new kind of fabric of continuity. So we've tried to work on stuff like that. It's been pretty helpful.
Good. So I think now we can open it up to some questions, and just to reiterate to the viewers, Nick and his team have probably done more research on you know, what working from home looks like and will look like, and really just remote working than anyone else you'll come across. So if anyone has any questions and looking for some insight in his research, or just anything else that Nick's accomplished through reimagining his future and KettlesSpace's future, please feel free to ask. We have a question on pricing, and it literally just says pricing question mark.
Our price for our software is around $5 per person per month, and we've waived implementation fees for early adopters, meant to be really approachable, and sort of cost pricing not being a barrier.
I'll ask another question. So one question is KettlesSpace an app? How do we see their performance, progress, et cetera, as the employer? So I'll let you take that one, Nick.
Sorry, I'm trying to find these.
Yeah, it's in the chat. So is KettlesSpace an app, and how do we see their performance, progress, et cetera, as the employer?
Yeah, so we have an app, and depending on the size of the company, it can be white labeled, so it feels like, you know, Citron Cooperman powered by Kettle, or it could just be the KettlesSpace app, depending on the size. And then the analytics that we get back are both qualitative and quantitative. We see employees' usage patterns, whether that's, you know, what types of space they're booking, what type of experiences they're booking, who they're meeting with, and we have the ability to coordinate meetings and kind of track collaboration efforts. And then we think the real goal, so that will ultimately help us understand what type of real estate we need in the future as all this unfolds. Do we need to renew? Do we need more conference rooms? Probably going to mean less of the physical fixed footprint and more of a collaborative, flexible type of real estate configuration. And then it also allows us to see as employers where people are working. That's the mixed modality data that I was talking about. So, and then we can take that and help you triangulate that against other productivity and engagement data, like whatever your success metrics are for measuring employee engagement and whether they're productive or not. And we can start to see over time, this person's thriving with this framework and this person's not, or this team isn't. And that's where we can start to make hybrid smarter over time. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, I like this one. We used to do things like throw football in the office. How are companies simulating those sorts of things in the rituals you mentioned? And I have clients that have ping pong tables in their offices and things like that, to where, going to work, there is a fun aspect in there. And how can that, and there might not be an answer to this, but how can that be recreated in a remote environment?
Well, I think it's split. I think you got to kind of identify the things that are going to be virtual and remote or hybrid, and they can be participated through Zoom. And we've all been subjected to a lot of that over the last year, some better than others, but kind of taking the good stuff and having it persist. And then a lot of companies we kind of call it the episodic gathering use case, where, okay, we're not going to be in the office as much as we were, but we're going to structure some, whether it's weekly, quarterly, monthly, whatever, some gatherings, and those are going to have intentions. In fact, in our app, we call it extracurriculars, because we think, and we need that, right? We need the football, we need the Peloton, we need the beer after work, whatever it is. I think we all miss that at this point. But enabling that to kind of happen, so it feels intuitive and it feels not forced, but also it actually happens and it's coordinated, purposeful. So those are some of the things that we're hearing. And I think I can share with you that what I'm learning is sort of, depending on how far a company goes in the remote spectrum, if they're going to be 90% remote versus 10% remote, that gathering takes on even more importance for the companies that are a heavier skew towards remote.
Okay, we only got 2 questions left, so I'm going to ask for you to answer these quickly so we can try and cover both of them. Basically, the question boils down to, do you see technology companies leading the way as it comes to hybrid work? What other verticals, such as banking, insurance, marketing, et cetera, are likely to adopt a hybrid model?
Well, I'm bullish on hybrid. I think everyone will ultimately adopt a hybrid model. Like I said, I think Gen Z and what they care about and the percentage of the workforce that they're ultimately going to control, they're calling a lot of the shots in the next 10 years. So I think certain industries will have different complexities, like financial services will have more regulation and things that need to be navigated in terms of structure and those types of things. And there are also older companies that have been more, the show up FaceTime model is just more of their culture. And then you have newer companies, a lot of technology companies and other types of startups and companies that have sort of been born more recently, that I think that it was a little bit loose and it was probably going to go this way anyway, but COVID was just the catalyst that kind of tipped it over. We've talked to creative companies and they've definitely expressed a strong desire to really make sure that the collaborative process is empowered. I think it's there's a lot of different activities. Some you can do just fine by yourself at home or near home, and some really are way better, as we all know, kind of face to face. So depending on what type of industry and work gets done, and it could be by team too. The engineering team is perfectly content working remotely most of the time, but HR or other teams may need to be in office more. And then there's the other complexity, which is people are part of different groups at the office. So you might be part of the HR group, part of the executive leadership team, and part of the, hybrid task force. And all of those groups have different kind of needs, and some can be cyclical. And, when you really unpack it, it can be fairly complex, and without some sort of centralized air traffic control kind of helping map it all together, it just needs that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think if an employee's job function primarily has to do with a computer and internet, then at least the flexibility to work remotely from home, wherever, is going to be a requirement to retain adequate staff. So we are out of time. Nick, thank you so much for sharing your insights and giving the group an experience of what you went through, what you've created and used the last 14 months to do. And we really appreciate your time.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Reach out if you need a thought partner and any of this stuff. I like to talk to people, so happy to help.
Very good. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.